Darren, Frye, and Arlan Suderman rejoining us. Darren, as you look right now at basis levels, there are some issues popping up. We're seeing low river levels and what impact that could have on shipping. The rail issues, it seems like, that just kind of, we kicked that can down the road. Those aren't over yet. What potential warning signs are you watching when it comes to basis levels, especially with transportation?
Well, we've seen the basis really weaken up here, like in central Illinois over the last 2 weeks. We were 70, 75 over. Now we're a dime under. We've just seen harvest and acceleration of harvest pressure that. But we do have those issues around, like, what does the rail end up doing? Do they settle it? Do they go on strike? I mean, right now we have this cooling off period, but we know we have low levels of water in the Mississippi. Some of these rivers are pretty low, and barge freight has really skyrocketed as we see that really eating into some of the margins. And so that has to be a concern. Like, we need to lock in this fall basis. If a guy hadn't earlier when it was stronger, a guy needs to consider that out through November, December, because if some of these things do worsen, we will see the basis just fall out of bed. And that will recover, especially in the Western Corn Belt as time goes on. But this will affect the East more than anything. And I do think it's worth taking a look at locking in any grain that needs to move between now and the end of the year.
Arlan, we've been talking about, possible recession for months, and we've seen the impact that it can have on the commodity markets. Do you think we could be in for another period where we do see a lot of that selling just based on recession or all the other factors that you talked about, like Ukraine? Could that continue just to hold prices in there for the next few months?
We've seen a lot of days lately when the market, the commodity markets have really been negatively impacted by this wall of worry on Wall Street, where there's just this fear that the economy is going to come to an end, that we're going to have major global recession. It's going to hurt demand for commodities. And certainly some commodities are more vulnerable than others to that. But it's really been a fear, emotion type thing. And as I've said before here, anytime the VIX is above 30, I've observed over the last several decades, it's difficult for any commodity to sustain a rally unless it has a really strong story, a near-term story, not a long-term story, but a near-term story that justifies continuing to take prices higher. And so that's going to be a factor as we go forward until we see that wall of worry come down, the VIX come back down below 30. That's going to be a continued concern here going forward. Watch the dollar. That's going to create continued challenges for us. The VIX over 30 are continued challenges. And I think the next thing to watch is the growing global credit risk. With the dollar being so strong, those developing economies that depend upon our commodities to a great extent, that have a lot of dollar denominated debt, have increasing amount of trouble paying that debt, which could create some problems with them buying commodities as well.
Yeah, on the currency side, Darren, that's a real concern when it comes to meat exports too. So Arlan talked about how these prices, you need a near-term story. Is there a near-term story when it comes to cattle?
I really don't think there is. The recessionary talks are really blowing hard for the meat and in general. Disposable income's been under pressure. And, just like in the cattle, we're seeing kill rates up a little bit, those weekly kill numbers. And I know that it's been really dry out west. I don't know if feed is part of that issue with margins coming under pressure, but with grain hard to originate out west and a small sorghum crop, small corn crop, no feed wheat available. If you take a look at that, maybe we're seeing some liquidation there. And also the choice select spread is out to $12. Normally that's bullish, but it's because select has totally collapsed. So I think we're putting in highs in both the beef and the pork side of things. Numbers will increase on the pork side as we get into the fourth quarter. And so I'm really bearish the meats here as we enter the end of the year here, especially with the recessionary concerns and what the Fed still have to do to get on top of inflation.
Yeah, Arlan, only about 30 seconds, but do you agree? Are you bearish on meats as well?
Yeah, I think longer term, we're going to tighten things up. But tell me when it's going to start raining. When La Nina weakens and we start raining in the western half of the country, that's when we're going to start holding back heifers and tighten up the meat supply even more. That's when we could see a recovery in these meat prices.
All right. Well, Darren, Arlan, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll have much more right here on U.S. Farm Report.